Right.
Wow.
So we are live now. Welcome everybody. Welcome our viewers to our monthly discussion of Wars of Light and Shadow by Janny Words. Today we'll be discussing Grand Conspiracy, and I think I'm repeating myself every time we have this discussion that this is my favorite book. So every time I beg read the next book, it's I always end up saying, okay, the latest one is my favorite book, and this is no different. So we have our wonderful panelists again, same from last time, but still we can have a quick round of introduction if we have someone new here. So watching us. So I think we can start with maybe Peel.
Oh, hey, I'm P.L. Stewart. I am Janny Wirtz is my favorite author. The Wars of Light and Shadow is my favorite fantasy series of all time. I'm honored to be here with such esteemed guests, um, Blaze, Nico, and of course the author Jenny herself. And thank you so much, Angie, for having me on your wonderful channel. You are awesome. Yeah, this book, Grand Conspiracy. I think Angie said it best that the way Jenny writes and the way this series has gone for me as well is that any book you could pick as your potential favorite, and each book, the storytelling just gets better and better, and
Mm.
the stakes get higher and higher. And it's like I said, this series is iconic. I know again, broken record, but the series is iconic. The author's iconic, and if you're reading you're reading the Wheel of Times, you're reading the Malazans, you're reading the A Song of Ice and Fires. You need to put this series in that category because it is just as signal as those series. So thanks for having me, and can't wait to chat about Grand Conspiracy.
Nico.
Well, hello. I am Nico from Nico's Book Reviews, big fantasy reader, and was even just pointed out on a recent comment on one of my videos. Apparently, like the person who just has to read every big long fantasy series. Because I had somebody commenting, I was getting really excited for this series, 10 or 11 books, depending on how you count it, and another 9-book series that I'm reading right now. And so I do love my long series, and yeah, I've fallen in love with Wars of Light and Shadow. I see. I still think that the Ships of Marrier combo is my favorite, but that's because I'm already getting the rereaders effect, where the next two
Mm.
books have done things that just made that book even better, and I loved it so much at the time. And then some of the stuff that happened to Fugitive Prince and some of the stuff that happened here, I'm like, oh my gosh, that just makes all the events there even better. But I've loved every book. Um, and I'll talk about this one because there was something I'm like, where are we getting this? And then it happened, and I was very happy with it. But really excited to be here with PL and Blaze and Angie. I still appreciate you inviting me into these. I have had an absolute blast blathering for hours about this series. And I look forward to doing more of that with this one.
Right. Blaze, you want to go next?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Blaze, also known as Under the Radar SFF Books. Unfortunately, I was not here for the discussion on Fugitive Prince due to a family matter, but I wouldn't want to miss this one for the world. Grand Conspiracy. My first time reading through was definitely my favorite of the series so far. Future books will change that, unfortunately, but rereading it again, I kept just remembering how riveted I was of what was happening, especially we'll talk about in the spoiler section, but in the middle chapters, going towards the end, it's like a nonstop, like adrenaline rush. But I can't wait to discuss this with everybody. And this is starting to come to the tipping point, which will be the next book in the series. But this one of my favorites in the whole series.
Awesome. So, Janny, you want to? Okay, we are in the non-spoiler section yet, so we'll keep it for 5 to 10 minutes, just to get a what we generally thought about the book. I'm sure we are all eager to get into dig into the details and ask Janny more questions. Before that, Janny, do you want to briefly give us what goes on this in this book, Grand Conspiracy.
Grand Conspiracy is the second book in the third arc. And if you are at all familiar or unfamiliar with the series, it follows an arc sequence. Book 1 is the first arc. It sets the stage. The second 2 books are arc 2, and they deepen the conflict and really invest you in the characters and begin to invest you in the world. Arc 3 raises it to worldview. So it's going to take a slightly different focus, and it will, as Nico pointed out, shift your opinions of all that happened before. This is typical. Fugitive Prince geared back to begin that staging to worldview. Grand Conspiracy picks up speed, but this arc, all the pieces are not on the table yet. And it definitely ends on, you can feel that momentum building, with Peril's Gate being the tipping point. And when I can say, I'm not going to say a word, because when you get into the convergency of this arc with Traitor's Knot and Storm Fortress, the pace will tremendously accelerate. So if you enjoyed this book, you're only going to enjoy what is coming even more as the worldview of the factions and what their motivation opens up. Again, that moves all the markers. You're going to think differently about all of the events that you made a judgment on before, because your judgment on those events is going to be called into question as you see more information. Plus, the characters are going to step into another phase of their development, and that is only going to accelerate also. They are not going to be the same people they were in book 1 or book 2. They are actually going to evolve, because the impacting events that hit them, they're going to respond in different ways.
Mm-hmm. But I slightly disagree there because Lysair is consistently being annoying. Like, he can really get, just when you think that he cannot get any more, worse, he becomes even worse. So I think he is an anomaly there.
He does.
So,
I mean, even he does some things different though in this one, where it's, instead of just going off and doing the thing he wants to do, he's actually like thinking about it and being like, is this the right choice? And so you even get a little bit from him where he's thinking about things. But I'm still Team Marathon, of course.
I still think that he is just pushing it forward to to the future. Like, I mean, we are in the non-spoiler section, so I can't say more, but he is still evil, I feel.
Would you know that if you didn't
Prince
see
of
the other
Light.
side? If you didn't have a filtered viewpoint of seeing the other side, what would you think about what he was saying?
Yeah.
It might shift, but yeah, I can't, there's a lot I can't say here.
Janny, if you somehow make me change allegiance from Aragon to Lysair, I'll be utterly impressed, but also I'll be so mad at you if you somehow manage to do that.
Yes, same feeling here.
Remember
I'm a die-hard Ariton.
Remember Pasquale? Did you cry when he died?
Yeah, I think we all did.
So a human being is a human being. Do you really have to love their politics in order to have empathy for them as a human being? I'm not going to say anything because you aren't seeing all the factors that are coming to bear. You may think you are, but you're not. And so your opinion of what Lysair is doing, there are things in this book that are a little bit Chekhov's gun or Easter eggy. And if you're paying close attention to the tiny details, there's some very, very dangerous ground being opened up underfoot here, but you might not catch it. Don't worry, it'll swing around and hit you in the back of the head if you miss it. But all of the pieces are actually in plain view. Just the characters may not understand what they are seeing yet. So Grand Conspiracy really starts staging for some major stuff to come. So watch the details, and we'll go into that in the spoiler section just a little bit.
Yeah, for me, I think this book tonally also a little bit I felt like the pace picked up when compared to other books, or is it because I'm now getting very comfy with the format of the whole series? But still, I felt that this was much more easier to read and it was fast paced, and there were so many things going on. And I think um, the previous books, were it was more focused on the characters more, but here, even though we do get the focus on characters, we also see the plot moving really fast and a lot of things are happening, and that kept me on edge. So I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, or but this is what I felt about the book, because I felt that this, I mean, I say this for every book that I read in this series, but still I felt that this is like really, really gain insight a lot of into the history, like you said, like in Peruvian history and what happens, and a little bit of a lot of explanation on how these magic work, and what should work, what should be done. A look into the law of major balance, a little bit of more in depth for first time reader like me especially. It threw light into all these aspects a little bit more, so I'm a little bit more comfortable with the world and the magic system, and the prehistory of this world, and why the fellowship sorcerers are doing the things that they are doing. Likewise, why the enchantresses are doing the things that they're doing. So things are kind of, they were kind of muddled in the previous book, at least in my head, but this book brought clarity to a lot of those aspects, I felt.
Yeah, Angie, I don't think it was in your mind at all. I remember the first time I was reading Grand Conspiracy, and the reason I loved it so much is because it felt like the pace was picking up a little bit.
It does.
Yeah, towards, not the non-spoiler, but like there's that one point in the middle, and then everything goes very, very fast. And then that goes into the beginning of the next book as well. This is probably one of the, if I'm remembering correctly, this is probably one of the quicker paced books in the series, at least to my recollection. That's why I fell in love with it so much. Yeah, you get a lot more worldview and open up interactions with the Coriani, with the Fellowship, and what they're trying to protect, and what their motivations are. That also broadened everything. And I'll save it for the spoiler section. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody.
I've got so many things like that. I'm like, how do I respond without immediately going? But no, I do agree, and it definitely, this book did a lot to focus on the bigger picture. And so I know there's definitely more to come, and as Janny's confirmed too, we don't even still have all the pieces, but really starting to look at the big picture, pull in things. And so I was sad that we focused a little bit less on my favorite character in the first half of the book, but then so much happened. I was so engaged, and then all the stuff in the back half especially happened. I'm like, yeah, okay, no, I trusted that Janny knew what she was doing, and she absolutely did. And I also managed my time really poorly, so I read almost this entire book within the last few days. And so the fast pace was nice because I was just flying through to get done. I read like the last 200 pages last night. So
at least it's fresh.
Very fresh.
This is a book too that, you know, I love when an author sets up, gives us a scenario that's coming, gives us all the foreshadowing, and when you get to that part of a book or a series when it pays off, I absolutely love that. That's one of my favorite elements of any, especially epic fantasy series. And so to finally see this grand conspiracy that the seeds were planted in prior books, to see that come to fruition and see what the result was. And obviously, you haven't seen the entirety of that result, but you see, you know, essentially, you know, I think for me, the choreographing and their plots and what they were capable of really started to, I mean, we got lots of tastes of it in prior books, but now, as Janny had alluded, you're really starting to see what the Fellowship versus the choreographing, their mandates, how they're diametrically opposed, how they're the same, but more and more and more the lengths that each one is willing to go to serve their ends and what those ends are. And that really hit home. But also, what also hit home is that um, I had to remember to, in my mind, to separate the leadership of the Coriathane from the rest of the Coriathane. And that's something that was important for me to remember because, like any, spiritual group or religion or organization, any organization for that matter, what the rank and file are doing and what they think their mandate is and what they think that the mission is can often be different from what the people at the top are doing, right? And oftentimes, the people at the top insulate the rank and file from the depths of their machinations and things they're doing, and that's something that really struck home for me in this book as well. And of course, Moyo Prime was just—I mean, she stole the show in this book, man. She really, we'll get that talk about in the spoiler section, but wow.
Yeah. I think everybody is eager to get to the spoiler section. So unless we have any more non-spoiler comments, I think we
The one
can
last
get
one is that the first 3 volumes plus Fugitive Prince, you are making judgment calls based on information you don't have. So as when you reach the territory in Grand Conspiracy, you're learning it at the pace the characters do for the most part. So what might seem muddled at the beginning is muddled for them. When you go back and look at the events in those books, you'll realize everything was already there, but you didn't have the acumen to see it because you didn't have the perspective and the vantage point to understand everything that was written on the page. So yes, a Grand Conspiracy, that worldview, that motivation, the moral high ground of the various factions is beginning to emerge, not in its full glory, not in its full depth and detail, but everything is going to start to fit together. And that is staging for the next layer that's going to be laid over the top, which will come in Arc 4. So, but there's staging for Arc 4 also buried between the lines here. So you're reaching a point in the series where the pace does pick up because you're beginning to understand where the pieces are coming from. And it's much easier to parse what is at stake for all the factions and the characters. What builds tension is curiosity, and you had to run on curiosity for almost 3 books. Now you're running on what is at stake for these various factions and how do the characters fit into them and how do the various pieces try to manipulate each other. So the pace does pick up, and in fact, the story pace picks up because there's less I have to weave between the lines. More of it's going to be on front and center stage. And the further the series goes, the more that's going to be true.
So Chivipo says, as Blaze said, this book is so good. It starts out so sedate almost, and then at a certain point, it just kicks into high gear. So I think we are all in agreement. I think there's another comment. You can kind of describe the first half of Grand Conspiracy as a board game like chess. It's a bit of a waiting game as all the pieces are in the right places, and then bam, it all explodes into action. Couldn't have said it better. I think we'll get to non-spoiler now. Oh, sorry, spoiler. Right. So we are in the spoiler section, and we lost PL. I think he's in the car, maybe. That's why. Should we? I think we can start. And
I think he'll pop back in.
Yeah,
Okay.
he popped out before for a minute and came back, so he'll probably be back.
Okay, so go ahead, Nico.
Ooh. Okay. So, so many things now. Now I'm like, where do I start? But I will say, so with Moriel, I was waiting for that to happen because there were all the little clues for that. All the little, why does she have this young, powerful, but kind of dumb initiate that she's grooming? That doesn't make sense. All the comments like, well, she wouldn't do it for no reason. So I was waiting for the body switch. for a while. But then I have to say the gravity of what she does to cover that up with just the like putting the whole, I guess not the entire planet, as is pointed out by the Fellowship, but at least the entire continent just into a state of imbalance.
Says non-spoiler. You might want to flip that.
Oh, I was just saying, I got big spoilers. I just am saying. So. I'll hold on.
So yeah, there's a non-spoiler tag in the corner of the screen, and we want to flip that off. Sorry, I'm just cautioning for new readers that they don't.
No, yeah, I was a lot of spoilers, so I'm sorry.
It's all right. No, the banner came up. She announced we were going to a spoiler section, so I think people are all right. I just didn't want to leave that non-spoiler tag in case somebody advanced the counter.
Nope, now I got you.
There
we go.
Sorry to interrupt you, Nico.
No, that's okay. But so like all of the just the imbalance and all of the things that meant, and seeing the Fellowship struggle to try to contain everything and even get an imperfect fix in. For a moment, I'm thinking, like, was this somehow her goal? Like, was she not going to do the body swap? And then she did. I'm like, there it is. So for a moment, I kind of like doubted, but I was waiting for that because I'm like, that makes so much sense. She doesn't trust anybody else to take over. Certainly not Lorenda. You could tell she was just playing with Lorenda, and so I'm so fascinated to see how that is going to continue on. And it was just in general seeing all of the different interactions and really getting more in this one. You really get, I feel like, more of a look at how incredibly, unbelievably strong the Fellowship sorcerers are, but how much restraint they have to not really use that. And it kind of became more and more evident as you see them do impressively or increasingly impressive things, but then also understate a lot of things as well. And so some of the descriptions of Ascendir, as he's like, he could have done this, he could have leveled mountains, frozen the sea, but instead he did a soft little breeze over, and it's just like kind of showing that. So the way that was done too, really, I feel like raises the stakes, and it does it at a great time because it also then shows the Choreothane getting a once over on the Fellowship, and you're like, okay, so both of these entities are more frighteningly powerful than we realized. So a lot of big stuff there.
Yeah, you're chuckling. I can see that, Blaze.
I'm not going to talk beyond this book, but going.
I'll throw something at my screen if you do.
So
I have just the perfect tool, an F-bomb.
I promise, nothing beyond Grand Conspiracy. But so reading this again for the second time, it brought back, at least I remember this when I was first reading it, the callbacks to previous books, like where the Grand Conspiracy has taken place in the city. That's where Arathon, if you go back to Ships of Mirror, that's where he sang his bard song and like leveled the city. That's the callback to that. There's other callbacks which we'll talk about down the road to previous books. That really caught me by surprise and made me realize how much more this series has to offer. And that's one more reason why I love Ships of Mirror that much more. But even from the first chapter, where we realize what the plan is for this grand conspiracy, what Lorenda and Alera are doing to Fionn, they're putting him through this ritual to make an Arathon look-alike, in order to bring all the factions into this one state, town, and just the suffering that he has to go through growing up. He always feels like he's detached. He never leaves his home, and just the suffering that Fionn had to go through. It really says a lot about this book, and we'll talk about the Memorial Sundering, which Nico brought up. Shows the power of her, the lengths that she's willing to go to get what she wants. The body switching in order to keep like her longevity, because she doesn't trust anyone else to do what needs to be done. She thought it was going to be Lorenda, but Lorenda failed her. She failed her in Fugitive Prince, so she had to pivot. So she had to find other ways to do what needs to be done. And the final thing I'll talk about, and we'll go into more details, is we finally, after 5 books of teasing, we get to see a little bit of Davian. It's been teased since book one, what's going on, and you see where he is in isolation, 500 years outside influence or outside paths to try to get in contact with him. He turns aside, but he's also not unaware of what's going on. And it takes the Sundering, or Moriel's attempt at a Sundering, to...
No, that's not the cue that pulls him out of QR.
That's not the cue, but he mentioned it in the chapter. That was...
Yeah. What pulled him out of isolation was not the Sundering, but yeah, it goes into the Sundering.
Right. And then we see... Then he does... foreshadow. He sees like in the pool, like certain events and outside, and then that will lead into other parts of the story. But I just loved it. It took so many factions that were hinted at and brought it into like the second half of this book, and just took off for me. That's why I love this book so much. It had everything going.
Spoiler banner is running again. What is going on? The non-spoiler banner is running across the bottom
something
again.
Something is wrong with my system. Sorry, go ahead. I'll change it.
Yeah.
Carry on.
So anyway, sorry.
No, that was it. Just everything coalescing into the finale of this book. Just, I loved it.
Yeah.
I got one favorite new character, which is Sethweir. I loved his arc in this book, his role in this entire book, and we got to see a little bit more of him. And I don't know, somehow he turned out to be my new favorite secondary character, I think. Apart from the Brydion brothers, oh my god, they are like another level. They just come up with their what do you call that, they blindside you with their actions and plans and all that. So yeah, I really like Sethweir in this, and overall the fellowship, of course, like Nico and Blaze just said, that they are fantastic, and we also get to see their motivations, and or their dedication to for Peruvian survival and all that. But Sethweir stole the show for me.
Just one more thing. I always mention that I didn't, going through the series. I'm coming back to here. It just made me realize how much I love Sethweir now, because he's the warden of Althane. He's in touch with the world and the planet in ways no human mind could understand. And it's not until now in Grand Conspiracy, after the effects of Moriel Prime's attack, that you see the lengths that he goes to try to set everything right. He basically, not fully, but he's basically in like a unconscious state, trying to fix all of the lanes, trying to undo what has been done. And he can't do it by himself. That's why Ascendir volunteers to help with one of the Grimwards. I believe it's Traith and I believe it's Karadmon are helping with other lanes as well. It takes all of them to fix this, even though Sethweir is the one like the most influence on all of this. And he's doing a great sacrifice, because while he's doing this, while they're distracted trying to go the lanes, the Coriani unleash their main plot to try to capture Arathon. So it's just a whirlwind of what's going on. It just takes place in like the last few chapters. So, but yeah, I agree. I love Sethweir. He will grow, if not in this book, for the rest of the series on everyone else, if you're not there yet.
I enjoyed more of him as well, and it's the and you mentioned Davian too, which was also something that I'm like, oh my gosh, we finally get to see him. I was also picturing his lair as like in the Matrix, the Oracle with all the screens, and I know that's wrong, obviously, but that's like how I was picturing him down there, just like watching everything. But a couple of the other like big things that. With like the Fellowship versus the Courier theme is the kind of casual bombshell that if things get too imbalanced, the Fellowship would be basically required to destroy humanity to make sure that the continent and everything is there and safe for the Peruvians on the planet, because ultimately we're just reinforcing that their strictures, you know, they're tied there to protect the land and protect the trust the Pravians gave them, not humanity, to the point that they could have to, you know, destroy humanity if they became too much of a danger. And so that kind of reveal, and because that was early on in the book too, just in a conversation with the guy on the boat who's like, "Why didn't you do more?" And he's like, "You have no idea what we do." And so like that revealed, and then more and more so that it seems that at least, if not the Corey of Thane, but Moriel at least wants to leave Aethra and go back to other planets, go somewhere else too. And so really, really raising the stakes so much with a lot of those things. The way this one ends too, it's really not a cliffhanger, but it feels almost like one, because I'm just like, I can't stop there. I have to continue immediately.
Yeah.
And had I not finished at 12:30 last night, I would have continued immediately. But yes,
No worries. The next book opens 5 minutes later.
I was gonna say
minutes.
that. Perils Gate picks up right where Grantsbury left off. So
I don't know if that's better or worse, because that even more means, yeah, I should probably start it immediately.
Yep.
well, you should.
Do it.
I'm really excited about Perils Gate because that's one book that everybody who has read the series keep talking about. So I'm really curious, to start that. Especially Blaze and PL. Like they keep talking about Perils Gate. So quite curious.
Well, wait till next time to get into that one. But
read the ending of it very carefully, because there's a lot of nuance. You can't just assume what you're seeing. So you'll know when you hit that section. Don't breeze through it, and you'll be fine. But it's the discovery that here's what the Fellowship is really guarding, and that throws all of the events in the previous book way in a different light. If you look at all the events, all the things the Fellowship say, all the things they don't say, all the things they don't do, you have much more of a clue of what's really being held back. Even though it said right out on the page how powerful they were, you couldn't really grip it until now when you saw it happen. And even still, you're not seeing the full deck.
Oh man, I will say that's these books, even when the pace is fast, there are always books that I have to read a little bit slower because I'm paying so much attention. And there was actually, and it ended up not being the case, but there was one part here where we were talking about ancient history, and then we were talking about the Second Age, and I was reading. For a second, I'm like, wait a minute. Did it say these people were doing this in the ancient? And I'm like, that can't be right. Something like this is either a bombshell or I misread. And I go back and I'm like, okay, I misread. That's less exciting. But I was looking for any clue of all of the little different things. So I feel like I've definitely picked up some, but I know there's so much more there. So it's this is also that's why it's got to be one of the most rereadable series ever too, which I can already just tell so quickly. And like I said, that's why. So the fact that the Ships of Mirror hardcover is probably still my favorite should also speak to how great Grand Conspiracy is, because there's all of the hits that just brought me back to those two books combined there, Ships of Mirror and Warhost of Asmar. And there's so much from that book that was so relevant. And so I enjoyed this book even more because of how much I love that book. And then this book just made me appreciate so much more of that. And oh my gosh, it's just, all of the things tying back, kind of showing the different things, the references handled so well. And I'll stop blathering in just a sec. The one other thing I wanted to mention, because I feel like this would be controversial for some people, but I really liked the whole sequence where they are scrying the future and they get the 12 years. That whole sequence where you see what they go through, where it's their souls are in danger just to get where they're going. And then they awaken the elementals that are of all worlds, which is a little bombshell just casually mentioned as well. And then they're like, hey, can you show us the future? And yeah, we'll show you the exact future for, let's say, 12 years. And, you know, you'd expect there to be some huge reveal. And it's like, no, everything's pretty much going to be fine. It's after that 12 years that you're screwed. And so you have that. And then that as a way of being like, everything was fine. Here are a few events that happened in the 12 years. I thought it was such a clever way to jump forward that much in time as well. And just, you know, you would expect there to be some big bombshells, but just the fact that, like, no, you're not that lucky. What we're giving you doesn't really give you a lot of information. And you went all through that struggle to get us to show you this much of the future for not a lot of reward. And it just felt a lot more real.
And that reminds me, Luane, because he suspected this cannot be it, right? There should be something. We are missing something. And even he had a lot of role to play, at least during the first half. So Luane was also really interesting. Yeah. And talking about the alliance, how the religion, like now it's spreading over the continent, and it's so realistic. Like you can actually see this happening in the real world, right? I mean, it has all these magical elements and all that, but still, you can see this happening. How somebody who really wants to manipulate and have a following can actually do it. And uh, you people who follow the alliance of light, they really believe that he is God sent or whatever, and they are the true followers. But so, then you have these, what really pissed me off is that he is having mages, like people who can do magic in the alliance, but at the same time they are lynching and killing these herb witches and other people who can wield magic. So that was such an irony, and it was really, really another reason why I want to hate Lysair. So any words on the religion here, alliance? Fearless back.
Well, there's more moving in
hey.
the background than you can see yet. Hi,
Yeah.
Paul's back. So there's more moving in the background than you can see yet. And if you look at the moment when Davien rouses himself out of QR, there is one incident that happens, one connection that's made that makes him break his isolation. And that is the hint that there is more going on behind what is happening on Lysair's side of the picture. And it will mushroom and balloon, but the seeds of it are here. And the seeds of some other things are here, and some of the lighter and more humorous moments I won't specify because it'll come up. So there's an awful lot going on yet still behind the scenes in this book. So if you thought this book took you back into Ships of Merior or the other prior events and made you see them in a different light, there are events in this book that you will get down the line and look back and go, oh my gosh, this was right there. So the tiebacks are going to keep coming all the way through. That's what this series does. It's really one of its distinctive marks. And it's why it was so hard for people to grip it at first, because it's not the Empire series where everything progressed linearly. This does not progress linearly. It progresses in layers. And as you heighten and deepen your vantage point, all the other layers come into a different focus. The Empire didn't do that. And so readers were expecting one thing and got another. And so this is what I'm really pleased it's coming out, as people are actually seeing this series perform as it should have right from the start.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I was looking for. Layered. It's not progressive, but you get more and more revelation of things happening, and things underneath with every chapter or every book that you read.
Yeah, it's just each book builds on the previous ones so much, and that's something that really makes a series transcendent as well. When it's not just we're just telling the story, but each consecutive book makes the books before it even better. And because of the fact that it's building on those, it starts at such a high level already, and then when you add more, it's great. I was going to say on the religious part, Angie, you brought up too, something that I was paying a lot of attention to in this one is there is most certainly a divide between his priests and Lysair himself, because they're doing a lot more than he's necessarily involved in, and they're playing their own game. And that goes back to the secret plot to kill Talith as well, and then claim it was a suicide. So there's a lot going on, and it's kind of like the whole religion thing is kind of bigger than Lysair at this point. He's still using it, but he seems to see it as like a part to play or a piece in his campaign, and I feel like it's kind of getting away from him, and it's become something even stronger. But the scenes too with like him and his new wife and the heir and like the vigil of that area, those are the juxtaposition there, is because there were so many powerful scenes and really great scenes. You're like, you feel like these should be the good guys, and yet because of how you see it, you're like, but they're not, and so there's so many things like that where it's the types of scenes you're seeing. Because if you look at this book, Lysair just wants peace and prosperity, and to raise an heir, and Arathon's like, I'm pirating, and then I'm gonna go and kill a bunch of people in J-Law. And like, if you look at just this book, like the things that they're doing, they're not necessarily playing the roles you would expect. And so it's really cool to look at the differences.
Yeah, it's I think what stuck out for me too, and those are some excellent points, Nico. Sorry, I missed a chunk there, so forgive me if I repeat anything or I touch on something that's already been spoken on. That I absolutely, there's those moments, as Angie I'm sure would say, that you just hate Lysair, but then you do have those moments of pity for him, and Nico touched upon what was going on with Elaine, and what hit me is that she turns out to be the exact opposite of what Lysair intends by his treatment of her. There's no room for a wife of Lysair's to assert her will, right? And he wants essentially just a broodmare to be docile, someone who can keep himself distant from and estranged from. Like essentially, he's setting up estrangement basically, right after the marriage bed, right? Right after the initial, create the heir, and that's it. I'm out, right? You can live a life of luxury, but I'm not gonna be around you. I'm going to pursue Arathon. I don't want you becoming my Achilles heel, because I can't allow myself to have feelings for you, because that's what happened to me the last time with Talith, and it backfired on me. So like that really when you start seeing the things that are crippling Lysair, for me, oftentimes it makes you feel even more sorry for him because of what he feels compelled to do. Right, he feels he needs to shut himself off from the ability and the vulnerability to love anyone, especially in a romantic sense, or else it will affect his mission, which he feels is sacred to take down Lysair, so to take down Arathon. So, that really struck me. In that whole, Lysair does all these things and it's horrible, but then you feel sorry for him. Right. And, obviously I have a weakness for flawed characters, but I like seeing that side of Lysair that is so scared to allow himself to attach himself to someone that, it creates some dire consequences. And he treats Elaine horribly, absolutely horribly. But that's all because, he's scared.
He has to get ridiculously drunk to follow it through. He has to go drunk to the edge of losing self-control. So yeah, you nailed it. He's not exactly a happy character in this situation, and what he does is reprehensible, but he is not happy with the role he has to play.
But I don't feel pity for him. I was so angry with him because I'll tell you why. I have my justifications. Because both are affected by this, haunted by the same curse, right? But Arathon is ready. He's able to run away from it, trying to avoid a conflict. He's doing everything in his power to avoid things, and with the fellowship's help, of course. And he is aware that it is a curse that is making him or both of them do these things. Why is not Lysair opening up to that? Because even so many times people tell him it's because of your curse, but he is just not ready to listen at all. He's not open to anything. He's so adamant, and that's where, I just don't want to give him any benefit of doubt.
But this too, Angie, is what goes back into the discussion we had on the previous book that I think we touched upon, and obviously, I think other than Blaze, I'm the only one that's read all the way to Initiate's trial and waiting for the last book. But that also feeds in for me. Now I can look back with perspective, not trying to spoil anything, into the individual gifts and traits that all of these High Kings were bestowed on, and Lysair's lineage, of course, elicit what their strengths. I said this before about any character, any person that exists in the world. Your strengths are also usually your weaknesses. So if you're predisposed to something, it can open you up to something else. It can be a boon or not. And I think a lot of that feeds into Lysair's predisposition to do certain things. My understanding, again, even though I've read all the way through, I'm still learning. It's still limited. I'm still learning a lot from the veterans like Blaze and of course Janny herself about elements of this book. But the gift element of the High Kings, some are imbued with more of a gift than the gift that they're supposed to be endowed with than others. Some of them can handle those gifts better, and some of them, those gifts are exploited or can be exploited, especially by the people around them. And I think that's part of Lysair's issue, that he is, his strengths are also his biggest weaknesses. So.
Well, that was exactly what the Coriathane were relying on, that Arathon would expose himself to protect that innocent. They're manipulating him through the weakness side of his gift too, because he's not necessarily making the soundest decision here. So they knew exactly what they were doing and which card to play. So you're right, it can go either way. And that's true of any strength on any human being. In the right circumstances, it's a strength. In the wrong circumstances, it's a deadly weakness.
And I love that element about the individual lineages and what they were supposed and why. A lot of what I question now that I'm at the point I am in the series is the whys, and I don't know all the whys yet, and that's fine. And I'm sure I'm going to learn more as we go into the final book. But part of those whys for me are starting to more and more formulate around, why Arathorn is able to achieve certain things that Lysair isn't. Because gifts aside, there's certain, there's everyone's natural, predisposition to do something, and there's everyone's individual qualities and characteristics and personality. But I see more and more, and I think this makes Angie happy, just how special Arathon is, and it's not that Lysair isn't, but just how special Arathon is, over and above, being endowed with these gifts, over and above, he is just a special figure in the entire universe. He's a central figure. It's not, although the series is almost, you're juxtaposing light versus shadow. Arathon, he is pivotal to so much more than just that conflict. So
he's a trained initiate master, and that puts him in a different position right there. But and the rest I can't say. But what makes him tick is much different due to that training on top of what he already was. And there's more coming. So there's a lot I won't say here. But yeah, if you think about, if the Fellowship's prerogative was protecting the planet and holding the continent and the mysteries in unity to promote Paravian survival, if you look at the 5 kingships and the 5 gifts that they had, they were designed to work in concert. it wasn't necessarily one guy had all the pieces. It was there were 5 qualities that were needed in extreme measure to call together to form a unity. And sometimes it works and sometimes it works against. As this fracture happened, they're missing one. There's another one that's enthroned, and then there are 2 that are sort of gone rogue that we got going on with this conflict and the curse. So if you think of it in terms of that, what was the fellowship's motivation? It wasn't a one-on-one thing necessarily. They were working at a larger purpose. And I don't think what I'm saying is a spoiler here, because you now know what the fellowship's directive is. You don't know everything about it, but you know what the directive is. So if you historically go back to for year 1, age 3, when humanity made their appearance, what would you have done driven by that directive? And that will make some of the things concerning the High Kingship and some of the things concerning the compact and how the governance of this world was put together, it will make a lot more sense. But you sort of have to take the puzzle pieces and think about it, because some of it will emerge on the page, but a lot of it's the submerged part of the iceberg. So logically, it all fits together. But I don't necessarily tell you in a big exposition exactly why everything was done that way. I leave a lot of it. I trust your intelligence to figure it out. You're going to know the pieces you need to know for the story to work, but there will be more on the peripheral edges that if you think about it, you can figure it out.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed the little pieces here and there as we've seen more of the picture and we get more and more. And I feel like, and a good way to put it with this book between, Lysair and Arathon, between the Coriathane and the Fellowship, and your series is literally called The Wars of Light and Shadow. I mean, that sounds like that's going to be the most black and white possible series, where it's like, okay, light good, shadow bad. And you immediately don't do that. But then even looking then, like it's easy to, in the early books, to be like, okay, Arathon's the good guy, Lysair is the bad guy. The Fellowship are the good guys, the Coriathane are the bad guy. It's easy to kind of make those decisions. And then the further you get, the more so it's like nothing's even close to that simple with it, because like I feel like I've trusted the Fellowship less and less in some ways, but then there's more explanation, and you see what all the Coriathane are doing, but knowing that they really care about humanity and the Fellowship ultimately doesn't, that makes it more complicated. But I really want to know what the reasoning behind Davian's betrayal was too, because I feel like that's going to be very relevant, because he's part of the Fellowship, and it's because of him that we had the uprising that upset, the royal rule and everything. I'm like, and I want more there, because he's the character who's been instrumental since the first book. Yeah, I see it. I'm like, So I'm really looking forward to finding out more, because he's such an important character, yet we never see him until now. And so, yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I'm inclined to believe that he had good reasons, because I trust the Fellowship less than I once did, for sure.
One thing about Davian, and this is not a spoiler at all, he is one of the most complex characters you will read in the series. That's to say the least. So when you get to see more of him, read it slowly. Take everything you hear or see maybe with a grain of salt. That's all I'm going to say.
Every time I think about Davian, I think about, in some ways, and not because he's like Janny, but I think about Janny that he's a maverick. He's someone who, has his own way of doing things, is totally outside the box, and, is uncompromising in the fact that, that's how he approaches his role and where he is. And I really admire that. And I also, I can't say too much about that because I'm just stuffing, stuffing down all the things I want to say, just like I'm sure Blaze and Janny are. But I want to say this, Nico really hit on an exceptional point that I think gets lost when we assess Janny's writing as a whole. Everybody talks about, almost every discussion of a fantasy book in certainly in modern postmodern types, it's all about tropes. And is a trope done well? Is it too tropey? Is it not tropey enough? Like, well, I can say this, Janny, and like I said, Nico really hit this well. You pick up the first book and you read the prologue, and it sounds like, okay, yeah, Wars of Light and Shadow, dark's gonna be bad and light's gonna be good. Janny does the ultimate, not just inversion of tropes, but she takes the tropes and she just crunches them up and just throws them out, right? Because you really and truly, and this is the other stunning thing, the more you go on the series, the more of a holistic view you have of both sides of this conflict. You get to see almost everything. You get to see the people who are not the main characters but surround them and what their complicated motivations are, and it's so complicated, right? You get to see more and more as Nico was alluding to, about like, when you go back and you read the shorts, which I had the privilege of reading, that Jay said, that opened up a whole entire, like, the shorts will blow your mind. When you read all those shorts, they're going to make you think completely differently about the entire series. I know it did for me, right? But the more you go on in this series, the more you see that this is so much more than this simple black and white conflict, good, evil. It's so, and like I said, Janny is a master of forcing you to challenge your beliefs about what you think, about what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's evil, and also, especially, what people are willing to do, ends justifying the means, for causes that they believe are the right ones, right? And these causes continue that put people on almost diametrically opposed ends of the scale, but sometimes they're actually fighting for the same thing. It's masterful. What Janny does there is completely masterful. Janny takes the tropes and she tosses them, and she inverts them and she subverts them, and it's incredible.
If you take the titles of these books and the title of the series proper, if you look at Grand Conspiracy alone, how many conspiracies are afoot here? There are always more layers to those titles than the surface, all the way through. So, of course, the prologue, if you have read all these fantasies and you think you know what you're seeing, you don't, because the layers and the levels are going to come forward. And to me, that's one of the great challenges of reading, is coming out of a book where it had so much meaning that you did think differently because you had read that book. And I set out to do some of that in the series. I might miss by a wide mile, but if I constantly feel like the more we go through life, the more we learn, and each event that happens to us is a crossroad. We can either grow into our strengths or step back and encapsulate our weaknesses and become more entrenched and keep justifying keeping those weaknesses in place. So as the series branches out and gains perspective going forward, looking at the human interactions and how people respond to crises or events in their lives, I wanted to provoke that deep thought. And I wanted to drop a match on some of that dead kindling that we carry around, because we're told when we're young, this is how it is, black and white, simple, good, bad. Morality is not simple. It was never a simple issue, ever. And we're forced to make our choices on the data that we have. And the data we have is always, always, always incomplete, because we're one human being with one viewpoint and one set of experiences, one set of ears and one set of eyes. And how much did we use them? How much are we willing to listen? And how much are we willing to torch that dead kindling out of our past so we can grow into a future that's different? And everybody responds differently. So it's that layering of the full spectrum of human response and the ability to turn around and come forward. Forgive me, I got to get up and knock a cat off the shelf because she's saying, you're paying attention to somebody else. Well, I'm going to knock your fragile things on the floor, this little devil.
Sounds like a cat for sure.
Yeah, 8 pounds of crazy, 7 pounds of crazy. She's a lit spark. So anyway, if I have to jump up and stop her, it's because she's going to bust something up. So it's a great pleasure to me, to sum up what I just said, to be with a group of readers here, reaching out to other groups of readers to see this book actually working as it was designed to be. It's a huge thrill on my part.
And it's, well, the way you said with the prologue too is I actually read the prologue, just the prologue, a couple of months before I started the series, at least, because I got the ebook and I started it. I'm like, oh, I'm going to definitely want to just sit and physically read this. So I started working on getting the books, and it took me a while. And then I started later, and I thought I knew what the story was about after reading the prologue. And then I read the first book and I'm like, oh, no, I was incorrect. So really definitely happened that way for me, since I actually read that, put it down, waited till I got more of the physical books, and then started.
I'm sorry. Did we? And I may have missed it when I was gone. Again, I apologize for absence. I know we're talking about characters. Did anybody talk about? I know Angie talked about the Sobridan brothers. Obviously, there. Did anybody talk about Dar? Sobridan? Did anybody mention Dar yet?
Not yet.
No.
No.
Take it away.
Well, I just, like I said,
Nobody.
I just want to quickly mention Dar Sobridan, who's the grandmother of the Sobridan brothers. That was my favorite character in the book. She is exactly kind of snarky, crabby, cantankerous, sharp-witted, sharp-tongued, like plain speaking, just ball-busting, past age of caring what other thinks, what anybody thinks, like, regardless of what rank they are, what, like, that's it, like, I adore those characters. And Janny just wrote her perfectly, just perfectly, right? And
she was a delight.
yeah, like the way she dressed down the acolyte, the Lord of Light guy, and the way she just handles all these fiery Sobridans. They're so martial and they're all so badass, and she just puts them in their place, and they're scared of her, you know what I mean? And she's, this diminutive stature, little old lady, but her presence is just enormous, right? And she
Don't you want to put her in a jar with Boreal and shake them and watch them fight?
Oh God,
that would be a
I'm
scene.
pretty sure the world would end.
Yeah, I'd like to see who comes out of that one alive. Yeah.
Oh.
Just kick
Cage
ass.
match.
She reminded me so much of this lady from Game of Thrones. I forgot her name. She says, right, tell Cersei.
Oh,
I want to know it's the
Alena,
yeah,
Martell?
Lena,
Martell.
Martell.
yeah.
Yeah. She. But just I
But
love.
leveled up.
Yes.
My money goes on Dar.
Yeah,
she
she
was
is
like,
awesome.
but just and that's you want to look at Janny's brilliance. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, she's an important but not major character, right? There's so many characters. This is a book. This is with a sprawling cast, a lot of characters. But when you can take a character that isn't nominally as big as a lot of the other characters that are on the stage, and Janny makes you just totally fall in love with this character, like, that's a skill, man. That's a serious skill, right? When someone's on the scale of characters that's not as critical, and you just gravitate to it, like, that's a big skill, right? And it takes a lot of skill to write a character that compelling, that is not a major character and just like essentially a side character, and make you want to see more and more and more of them. And after I met her, I was just like, I need more. I think I was messaging Janny. I said, I need more Dar. I hope she's in the next books, right? And of course, I got to see more of her arc in the following books. But yeah, it's just I had to comment about Darcy Bryden, just exceptionally well written character.
But the
Somebody
way
remind
that
me, did the backstory on how she did her courtship come out in this book? I think it did.
yes,
Did,
that's
yeah.
actually just what I was gonna say.
By her grandfather, and you remember the Sobridian embedded glass in all their battlements, right? In their windows. So she went out her window, scaled a tower, climbed in another window over all this glass to conceive her first child and force the marriage. I mean, come on, what's not to love? Anybody who says there are not strong women characters in this book didn't really read it very carefully.
And that's exactly what I was going to say, because it was brilliant the way you introduced the character. Because before we actually meet her, we're hearing the stories from the Ceridian brothers as they're doing their stuff, and like,
Yeah, she
oh,
whooped
did you hear
Mary's
about?
ass. Time to marry you.
Yeah,
He goes running home.
exactly. And so like it was established what kind of character we were going to get, and then when we actually get the character, it's like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. But I loved the thing too, because after all of the subterfuge, after all of the careful planning, so that Mirn and Perian can pretend like, oh, we're still on this side, she goes and unequivocally basically tells the princess that Lysera is our enemy, with that little scene of not touching the wine because custom will not let her drink to an enemy. And I'm like, that was such a powerful scene, not only because it showed that's just how like badass she is, because she's like, I'll tell you, but also like the vote of confidence that put in Elaine, basically like, hey, I'm trusting you with this knowledge that could start a war. I'm acknowledging you, and that we support you, but not Lysera in a way. And so it's just like that was such a great scene. And I loved the funny scenes like earlier with the priest, but that right there, I'm just like, oh man, that I loved how that was handled too.
Since we're talking about strong women in the Wars of Light and Shadow, I was telling this to Janny yesterday about one such lady who stole my heart this time, and I've caught it the second time through. It's the old widow, the spintress, who we see at the end, towards the end of Grand Conspiracy, who shelters Arathon and Theon away from the lady. Yeah, and I pulled a section, if you'll indulge me. I'd just love to read it. So this is after Arathon and Theon are invited into their house. Sit. She invited courageous despite Theon Aris' adverent hissed breath. I'm a friend of the Fellowship Sorcerers. My welcome extends for as long as my house can safely provide you with sanctuary. Lady, in gratitude, we owe you our lives. Arathon restored the striker to the box, but stayed standing, where the free-fallen blood from his wrist would drop without harm on the tabletop. You were told we had need. Again, the lucent laugh of amusement. I dislike the Corianthane, as you guessed. What they want, I would deny them. Old bitterness colored her sight as she qualified. Her sigh as she qualified. They asked for me, you see, as one of their initiates. I refused, and the Fellowship enforced my born right to stay free. No one ever proved that the charges for dark witchcraft which saw me to the faggots were made by the order's arrangement. But my mother believed, so till her hour of death. This house was my sister's, though she has passed also. I live here with Jask, who first served my father as a message boy. Then who wakened the stones? Asked Arathon, conversational. He caught a stuffed stare and sat as the servant returned with a steaming basin on a tray, an aromatic tin of salve brought along with the requested linen for bandaging. I was blind, scarred, and talented. Pert under her shawls, the old lady tracked each sound as her guest declined Jask's attentions and took charge of his hurt on his own. Sightlessness came to resharpen those senses. What friends I have made over those long years have exceedingly subtle voices. Her natural warmth and gratitude shone through like fine light as she finished her explanation. The stones woke on their own, a thing to ease my loneliness after the fire. A tribute and an honor, Earthen allowed. So it shows a little bit of how the Corianthing get their initiates. Not all of them are brought to them that they want to go willingly, but no one was wanted there to enforce their free will, but the Fellowship did. And over the years, she became blind, and the stones realized she said she had the gift, but she was never trained. So they performed for her and they enhanced for her. And then I didn't read that part, but she gave the stone to Arathon to use. So that just brought back, because we first see her in Ships of Miriam. There's a small section of her, and I didn't have that with me. But again, callback, and very strong woman who has an impactful moment with Arathon, but in the grand scheme of things, it's very, very small. But that'll just stay with you.
Yep, I love that. Was a good, well read, Blaze. That was an excellent point. I don't know it again. Forgive me, I might have missed up. I want to. Blaze touched on the Korathian again and strong women. I want to speak on one more woman here that because I love, I'm a sucker for romance. I'm a sucker for passion and unrequited love and love triangles and all kinds of craziness. I guess that's just me, right? Maybe I love the drama or something. But Lorenda, so what did everyone think about the kiss at the end? We know Erathon was just using it, for his own purposes. But what do we think about, and what do we think about, Lorenda, the fact that, she hates Erathon, but she has harboring this passion perhaps for him. Like, what do we think about all that? And what do we think about that kiss? That scene with the kiss. And obviously, it was for a purpose. It's not because Erathon feels anything for her. But what do we think about it?
That was such a wild way to end. I was wondering what was going to happen, and that was not on the list of things that I thought were going to happen at all. As I was going through, like I called some stuff really well in this book, but the ending was not one of those things. But it was seeing that too, because it's not like it came out of nowhere. We've been seeing that with Lorenda for a while, where very specifically, I think there's like a prophecy at some point where she's basically told that Erathon will kind of like be like her bane or undoing or something like that, because of the fact that she's not going to be fit to be Prime because of these feelings that she hasn't dealt with. And so that's why she hates him so much, because she knows that he can basically unlock that flaw in her. And so seeing it kind of used against her was really interesting. And just kind of like, it was so easy to picture that scene too, where he just goes and kisses her and she's like shocked and stunned and can't react. And he's just like, ta-ta, goodbye. Like, forgive me for doing that in front of you, Elaine. Just walks out. It was quite the scene.
He gives her a line on that one, though. He says, beware of what happens when you use other people's feelings against them. And it follows his pattern of using the flaw to blow your balloon apart, and you can step forward and grow from it or go back. So if you think back to Muriel's warning to Lorenda in Curse of the Mistwraith, when she observes Alara's character study and says, beware, because you're going to see into this person far deeper than you should, and it could be a pitfall for you. So the thread is all laid there, all the way up to Erathon got a hold of her personal crystal. He read her to the bottom. He saw which parts of her were frozen. If you say he used what he did for his own ends, also he gave her a chance to buy her own freedom, to unlock a facet of herself that had been frozen and scarred and damaged as a child. So there's always more layers at work at once than just what is going on, especially when there's an initiate master that's trained, concerned, especially where the fellowship is concerned. That offshoot angle of their training is going to take it a big step further than just the action on the page. So yeah, you wouldn't see it coming because they see it all and you don't, because you don't have that vantage. But there's also that open door to a redemption always there. They would seldom use a particular stunt to gain their own ends and leave damage. So watch for that. And I'm not going to say who or what to watch for, but when you're dealing with power that walks on that level, that kind of thing is going to happen and come around. And if you're aware and alert to it, you might see it coming or you might not, but you be aware it's always in play.
What do you think, Angie? What do you think, Angie, the kiss thing? What do you think, Angie, about the ending there?
That's where I really felt what I should feel about Erathon. The first doubt about him that creeped into me. I mean, and also I think there was a kind of a hint towards the first half of the book where the prime matriarch and Lyrenda, they are crying, and at the end of that, there is a reference to a kiss or something like that. So I don't know if anyone of you remember that part. So I knew maybe something is going to happen, but I couldn't figure out if it was really Arithon, because that is not specified during this crying. It's just about a kiss or a touch or something like that, and suddenly she is embarrassed, and she comes out of this crying. So, but still, it kind of confused me. Like the whole scene. What did you feel
The
about it?
memory of the melody that he pulled
Yep.
out of that crystal at the very end of Fugitive Prince, and the other two people who were listening, Dakar and Jirrit, hear that composition Arathon was perfecting at the very end of Fugitive Prince, and they thought
Mhm.
it meant Alara, or they didn't realize what they were hearing. That subversive melody was the counterpoint to unlocking that frozen passion in Lorena, and it got her into trouble when she got the crystal in her hand, because it started to work.
Mm.
So Arathon was simply taking that foundation. So if you didn't understand quite what was happening there, it was that music. He whistled a phrase of that melody and
Mhm.
got in under her defenses. So he was not responding the way she predicted. She was going blunt force object, and he was going very subtle, slipping under
Mhm.
the fences. And so if you look back at the seeds that led to that, that might help you understand it better. It's one of the things where these books have such a wide base of bread trails. Not everybody picks them all up at once, but when you go
Yeah.
back to reread, it will stand out to you.
That was one of the times it really, it's obviously struck me prior to that. There are three key things. One, it struck me just how strong the union between Arathon and Alara are, because Alara, they're basically making fun of Lorena, right? It's all a big joke. Like Arathon's kissing her and getting her all hot and bothered, and they're him and Alaria are having a grand old time over it, right? Because she knows Alaria is so confident in Arathon's feelings for her that him kissing Lorena means nothing.
Yeah.
He's just playing, messing with her, right? And like that was one thing that really stood out. That okay, you're thinking, okay, well, for most people, okay, your partner, your love of your life is kissing this woman. That's a big deal, right? That's a
Yeah.
betrayal or whatever. But no, she was totally fine with it because
And
their relationship is different in that I guess the level of security and the level of confidence on how they feel of each other that was the first time it really, really, really hit me how deep that is. It hits a lot more in later books, but
Yeah.
that was the first time it really like. And then quickly, the second thing is that, and I want to let this Angie speak. I love seeing someone like Lorenda, who is highborn and very posh, and she's cold, she's composed, she's she has it all together, right? But not in that moment, you know what I mean? She's all fire underneath the cold, calculating, the cunning exterior, her ambition, because all really what we think of her, we think of her ambition to become the prime, right? But underneath there's this raging inferno, right? And that's I love seeing that stuff, that other side of people, because she's done everything she can do to be the prime, and but seeing Arathon as her great exposure. And I mean, when I say Arathon, I'm thinking that there, the possibility of her feelings, love, things like that, that there's
Yeah.
something big going on there. Yeah, that was awesome. Sorry, Angie, I didn't want to.
No, I just wanted to say that Elera and Arithon, they have this connection, um, because in Fugitive Prince, I think it was in Fugitive Prince that they heal this guy whose hand has been torn off, right? Whose arm, and that's where they have this connection. And even though Arithon is so far away, they can feel each other and all that. So I think that confidence comes from that connection also, that they know each other, and yeah, they, they know each other so well, and they're connected in some way.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. Yeah, I love that. I thought it was Janny always nails her endings. And a lot of times it's expected. It just like you're off just left there, just going, what the hell just happened? Like, what happened? Right?
All right.
It just totally blows your mind. And I can say that only just ramps up 10 million degrees as you keep reading, and you just, some of those books. I don't think I mentioned this. So I got to a point in my reading of The Wars of Light Shadow where I just had to read straight through. I had to drop every other book, and I just read straight through the series. So to Anishi's trial. So and now, of course, waiting for the final book, waiting for Sound Mysteries. And I'm so glad I did, because my ability to immerse myself in that world, like seriously, it's been the highlight of my entire reading life as an adult so far. Just reading all those books straight, immersing myself in Janny's world, and just forgetting about, for hours on end, just forgetting about anything else, right? It's the best thing I ever did. I've never done that with the series before. I've never binge read a series, especially, you think it's a series this big and this complex. But I tell you, man, it was the best thing I ever did. It was amazing. And I know I missed things because, what happens too is when things get so exciting and so compelling, and you're reading, you're just, oh my God, I'm reading this. And then you realize, oh my God, I missed this, right? And sometimes I'd be chatting with Janny, like, oh my God, Jan's incredible. He's like, did you catch that? I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'd be like, flipping back to like, oh my God, I can't believe I missed that, right? So, but yeah, it was just incredible. And you're just in for a treat, Nico.
If
And
you take a break after this book and you wait to start Peril's Gate, which starts 5 minutes later, make sure that you go back and remember the promise that Arathon gave Fionareth to get him to comply to go out of the city without protest. Because that little point is going to blow up very big, very fast. And some people fly right over it because they're so immersed in what's going to happen here. But there was a signal moment where Arathon promised Fionareth something to basically shut down his rebellion until they were to safety. So if you read through the ending quickly, or if you're taking a long break, you'll want to remember that one point.
Peril's Gate ruined me.
It ruins everybody.
Yeah. I was just saying when you are not here, I was just saying, I'm really, really looking forward to Pearl's Gate because Blaze and PL keep talking about it all the time. So
just get your Kleenex, get your tissue box, just let it happen. Just that's all I can say. Let it happen.
Don't fight it.
Yeah, don't fight it. Yeah,
just absorb it.
I just want to put in a word of appreciation. Once again, I think I've told this again, and even in my reviews, that how poetic is Janny's prose, right? I just cannot get over the fact that someone can write so beautifully. I mean, like, I sometimes I haven't written reviews. I think for the series, because after writing something, I'm like, really, this crap for this amazing book? No, I'm not going to write a review. It doesn't do justice because I'm not equipped to write a review for this amazing a book, because in so many levels, language and how she uses, even the world building is so intricate. Like with every book, it's expanding, it's getting bigger. We get more insight into prehistory, and I think in any fantasy books, the prehistory part of it really, really amuses me. That's the major attraction for me. Even in Wheel of Time, when I'm reading, I like to know about prehistory, and so we, especially in Grand Conspiracy, we got it a lot, and the language and the prose, it just adds to the whole beauty of the book, I think. I just cannot get enough of it.
Thank you. Well, tell my publisher, because that will help them target the marketing.
Yeah.
Because, it means a lot to me that you see this, because I put everything I had into it.
So eloquently said, Angie. You certainly deserve to write a review of Jenny's books. You know, you're extremely articulate, but I know exactly how you feel because I feel exactly the same way. I feel exact same way when I try and write reviews of Jenny's books. Like, who am I to write a review of this author that, like I said, it just astounds me what she's able to do with the written word. And I I I always, people have been asking me more and more and more and more about Janny Worth's books, They know that I love them. They know that I'm a champion for them, for her as a person. She's such a fabulous person on top of everything else. And and they're like, but why? Why is it so special? And I'm like, you know what? If you think that you've read books that have great prose before, and you thought, okay, I've gone to the mountaintop. I've seen the upper echelon of people who write prose and fantasy. Well, read Jenny Wirtz and tell me what you think. And you know what? Invariably, almost every single one of those people have come back and said, "Paul, you're right. Oh my God, Jenny can write like no one else." I'm like, yep. I mean, I wasn't. It sounds like an exaggeration, right? Of course it does, because it when you talk about it the way a lot of us talk about Jenny's work, because we're so enthralled with it, it sounds like you're exaggerating. But just read it. Seriously, read the thing. You'll see.
It's literature. It's almost like reading literary fiction, but with all these elements of this extremely entertaining a fantasy book, right? But then you get literature as well. Like usually fantasy books are not this deep, like so many philosophical elements also, right? As we progress through the book, like Janny was talking in the beginning, right? It's the choice somebody is asked to make, and all these layers. But again, you might feel that it is somehow deliberately made uh, thick in terms of the language that's being used, but it's not, right? Because it just sets the tone for the rest of the series, and then you're just absorbed into this world. And then you go on and read some other book, and you feel like something is lacking.
The hangover. I had the biggest hangover when I finished reading Miniature Shaw. I was lost for like a good couple days because, and it's not that there's lots of great writers out there. There's lots of writers who have great prose and write great things. But when you read Jenny's book, yeah, it's almost like, I don't want to say a letdown. It's hard to reacclimate to reading another author in terms of the lushness of the words after you read Jenny's books. It's just hard for me. So, I think, for me as well, like I said, and, there are very few authors. There's lots of great authors, of course, 10 times better than me, that, innumerable, but Jenny's that author that makes me want to write better. Like when I read her book, I'm like, oh my God, I have to write better. Like, do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't mean I haven't read great books by great authors or that they're not well written and fantastic. But when I read the way she writes, when I read her books, it makes me like, I have to be better. Like that's the effect it has on me. So
when you look at discussions of books that are considered philosophical books, where people are saying what books have deep philosophy in them, my series very, 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 very seldom gets mentioned. Same with women's writing, very, very seldom gets mentioned. And it's been a curiosity of mine, just sitting back in the audience of watching reviewers or watching forum discussions when they talk about philosophical books. The books that come forward and are known for that are usually male written. And when the people speaking about them demonstrate why they're philosophical books, they will come out with quotable quotes. And it almost, I don't want to use this word, but it almost is, the male written books have no compunction. They're very bold in that they will come out and tell you. They will give you not a dialogue, not an interaction with the character. They will tell you why the world is this way. It's almost mansplaining. They will say, this is how life is. And they will get that beautiful quotable quote. and it will be right there in your face because you are told this is how it is. And that seems to register with the readers, and that seems to register in the quotable quote conversations. When you look at the women written books that are philosophical, you will see those quotable quotes, but more often it emerges in a character interaction or a piece of dialogue. It will be an interaction on the page between a relationship or a character. It will be and it gets overlooked. You don't see the women's books being put forward as a philosophical book. Occasionally you'll see a Robin Hobb or a Le Guin, but you look at how the women portray these same principles. The portrayal is different, but for some reason, when it's told straight up in your face, it seems to stick as this is a philosophical book. So it's really nice to hear this discussion covering that, because I think it's an area of fantasy fiction that is overlooked by the community because of the way the ideas are presented. One way is in your face and told, and the other way is done a little bit more subtly, but it's discounted because interactions between characters are supposedly less important than the action. And to me, the action doesn't mean much unless you're invested with the interaction of the characters, who they are, where they've been, where they're going, and what they think of what they're doing. That to me is what brings it alive.
And maybe, and it's funny you're talking about that, Jenny. Maybe, because we were talking about philosophy, you're talking about male writers, and you're right. I mean, I think it's hard. I think for most of us, automatically when we think about the R. Scott Bakers and the Ericksons, that we associate them with that deep philosophical.
And it's there. It's definitely there.
Certainly.
And I mean, it is.
I
go
think
ahead. Sorry.
the video froze there. We lost something.
You froze a little bit.
Oh,
sorry,
you're right. Yeah.
No. Go ahead, Nico. I was just saying, yeah. It's just so odd that happens. Go ahead, Nico. Sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. Like I said, you froze for a minute, and so we were just gonna continue until you were back. But yeah, no, it's definitely something I appreciate about Words of Light and Shadow and Janny's writing in general, is that things aren't just spoon-fed to you, and a lot of the themes are they're very present, but it's not blatant, and it's not just really shoved at you. It's kind of up to you to take away what you want to take away. And then I could see different people reading this series and taking away very different things book to book, because a lot of it is left up to you to determine and decide and to figure out how you feel about things, because it's very, very complex, as we talked about earlier. So it's there's so much there. It just depends if you want to really dig in and explore.
And one more thing about that is each book will make you take away something different. And as you read the whole series, you'll see it all culminate. But when you reread it, it'll bring forth different things you thought you saw, but you maybe misinterpreted. Some stuff you missed. Some stuff that just went way over your head. And there's plenty of stuff that went over my head the first time. And I'm now seeing pieces of it again. And so each time you read the book, it'll bring forth something different. It'll bring forth something that Janny put forth in there, but you didn't have the wherewithal to see what was on the page because you didn't have all the information beforehand. It's rare for me to read a series like this, rare for to me to find an author who can just give this to us, and it's like a gift that keeps on giving, like this series. So you'll never not find stuff that that'll interest you and stuff that just makes you look into the series in a new light.
Yeah, you can. Janny is an author that I eminently trust, and I'll say this too, because having read To Ride Hell's Chasm, which is my favorite book, fantasy book or otherwise, of all time, seeing how she handled the themes in that book, especially the racism, the bigotry element, and knowing that she has the wherewithal to approach subjects with an aplomb that you rarely find that in an author, period, much less a fantasy author. Trust Janny, trust in this series, because You're going to get everything you ever were looking for in epic fantasy, and more out of this series. You're going to get the compelling themes. You're going to get the amazing characterizations. You're going to get the thrilling, heartbreaking battle scenes. You're going to get the philosophy. You can get every single thing that you want, that most fantasy readers say you want in a fantasy in this series. Trust Janny. You'll trust her writing. Yeah, you won't be disappointed.
And read the short stories.
Yes, read the shorts.
Don't read Black Bargain until you're finished Arc 3. Definitely don't, because it will tip you off to some things coming. It won't totally spoil it, but you want to read that one after Arc 3. Before you start Arc 4. That's the correct placement for that one.
Okay.
Ooh, I can't wait.
Anybody up for some special features?
Please.
Yes,
Yes.
We
bring it
know
on.
in the spoiler section that Muriel engineers a major lane imbalance, and she's doing it supposedly to pull the Fellowship of Seven's attention off what she's actually doing. You don't know all of her agenda yet. You think you do. So there's more to that scene than I'm going to go into, but I want to give you another facet to what the Fellowship are actually facing here. If you look at the map of Ethera and you look at the major mountain ranges, you will see that there is a major fault line that is an X. And right in the middle of Melhalla, there's a subsidence of the land where it's pretty flat and it's a plain, but there's no mountains there. These are two fault lines that crossed. And back before the era of the Paravians, before the first stage, in the final era, before the era of redemption, which is where this story is set, there was what was called the First Sundering, where activity of dragons that were contending caused the first breaking of the world. And the continent literally buckled on those two axes. They opened up fault lines. And since that period, those areas of weakness have been stitched together. They're fragile. And there's a lot of energetic magic. There's a lot of underpinnings holding that whole situation stable. So when Moria Prime unbalances the 7 lanes, the lanes go all the way around the world. So each lane is circular. So when they say 12 lanes, there's actually 24, because it's like longitude lines that go all the way around the back of the world. So when she imbalanced that, she essentially imbalanced the entire planet. And she wants to break the Fellowship's power. She wants to gain the freedom to do as she likes. So that's what she was actually threatening. When you look back, the First Sundering happened before the Fellowship's time. It led to the founding of the first Dragon Protectorate, where the dragons that did not want to break the world decided to defend the planet. So there was a faction of dragons that set out to oppose the ones that had unlimited destructive ability and stop it. This led to the Great Dreaming, which brought the Fellowship sorcerers to, or rather, excuse me, it led to the first Great Dreaming, where those dragons wanted to heal the planet. And that was Ath's response. The creator's response was to send the Paravians to heal the destructive impulses of the dragons and heal the land. So that is where you started with the first stage, with the Paravians coming onto stage. In the first stage, there was a second sundering. This was before the Fellowship's time. There was an explosion. When the dragons dream, they created Drakespawn, which were dragon creations, and they weren't necessarily nice. They were not necessarily fully formed intelligences. They were volatile. Some of them were extremely destructive. They didn't have a moral compass. And there were multiple different kinds of Drakespawn that were very, very dangerous. They were originally evolved to attack other dragon factions, but they became destructive to the world. And one of the ones that they created were the Eots big brothers, called Sorderots. And they were called basically demon sprites or meth fiends. And they were the Eots big brothers. The Eots are the tiny little harmless things, practically, not quite harmless. But these were their big brothers. And they were confined in the first prison built at Rockville, which was built by the Centaurs. And the second sundering broke that prison and let those guys loose. So those beings got loose. The Lane forces were faltering in recoils. There was catastrophic weather. The mysteries were disrupted. The first Krakens were awakened, which were drake spawn at the bottom of the ocean. And these were the big brothers of the little Krakens. So there's all kinds of layers and levels of these drake spawn. This caused those Sorderots to go to ground in what is now Myrtlevane Mire, Myrtlevane Swamp. And they created the first mess spawn, which created the Great Guthorn, which was the bane of the Paravians. This thing was super dangerous. So those debacles ended the first age. There were 100 more years of the wars that resulted from that first sundering of the continent, or the second sundering. So the third one happened. The ending of the second age was the dreaming of the Concord, where the Paravians that were struggling to survive against these drake spawn and against all these attacks came together with the second dragon protectorate, and they formed what was called the Concord. So it was the Paravian conclave, which was the ruling Paravians, came together with the second dragon protectorate, and they dreamed the Fellowship of Seven. They dreamed a destructive force to come to Athera to defend Athera against the dragons that were rogue and the drake spawn. So the Fellowship of Seven came in at the beginning of the second age. During the second age, there was a third sundering where the dragons broke the wheel of the world again in an attempt to fracture the concord between the dragon protectorate and the Paravian conclave. So what you got then was the well at Myrtlevane broke and the Great Guthorn flew free, and that became the scourge of the second age. And I won't go into it any further there. Some of these past events will somewhat play into what happens in the finale. But just to give you an idea of what the Fellowship are suddenly contending with, not all of those drake spawn are gone. Not all of them are necessarily quiescent. We know that the Kadrim are in a preserve and they're literally locked away from the rest, and the Fellowship have to maintain a barrier. Many of the drake spawn are still alive, but they're living under a cord where they agreed to a treaty where they could continue to survive and not be wiped out by the Fellowship in exchange for holding to the terms of certain accords. So when Muriel unbalances the lane, she's probably not aware of all of the things the Fellowship are holding in their fists contained, since the Paravians are not there to help them. It's all on their shoulders. So the crisis that's breaking loose is far wider than necessarily Muriel thought when she planned this disruption. She maybe thought that she was making a major inconvenience. What she's created is a massively undermining crisis. And some of that she wanted, but she may have bit off more than she bargained for. So there's a little bit of a special feature for you, a little bit of fun that you can play with. So as you read going forward into Peril's Gate, you are going to know that there's a whole lot more rocking the foundation of the world than necessarily the Coriathane had in mind, and the lengths that the Fellowship would go to contend with what's been cast into their laps rather wantonly and totally by surprise. You know, nobody would imagine breaking the very world you're living on to upset a stalemate. But when you understand what the Coriathane's goal is, which you don't fully know yet, it will make sense why she did what she did. So there you go. Little tidbit for you.
It was wonderful.
Thank you, Jenny. That was incredible.
Wow, thank you. Yeah.
There's room for a lot more fiction to be written in this universe if I get the green light to do it, which is all dependent on the series, how it goes forward from here. So yeah, some things I'm going to play with anyway, but whether I do anything broad scale or large in this universe, it's got to somewhat justify the time.
Well, I can say this, you know, I know maybe we're not where we want to be, but I see more and more and more people reading The Wars of Light and Shadow on YouTube,
Yes.
talking about it on social media, you know, so there is some momentum going. I know we need more, but I think that
They
ground.
have no idea what they're missing, because you know what? Here we are, only standing at Grand Conspiracy, just starting with a spoon to dig beneath the surface to all these wider things that are happening underneath. So yeah, I'm excited and squirming in my chair a bit, because I know what's coming, and it will absolutely flip your wig 6 times over and blow it up. It'll be fun.
I still have not recovered from an shit straw. I still have not recovered from shit straw.
Well, I will say this right now, that the publisher is asking me to put together a list of who should get advanced read. And so if you want to be on that train, get there, because I'm making that list. I'm making that list.
I was gonna say I will definitely make sure I'm done.
Please,
100%.
Yeah.
Sign me up. I'm all in. I don't know if I'd like to know what in 50 years things will look like, if I had a crystal ball after I'm long gone. But I would predict that, in the next few decades, that, you're gonna start getting the recognition that you deserve as the iconic writer that you are. Because I see the groundswell and I see what's happening, and I would say that it's coming. I'd say it's coming.
Well, I'd like
I
to be
think
here to see some of it. Please don't make the
I was gonna say, let's get it sooner. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just a matter of getting them read the first book, and then I think it's sorted. I think people who really appreciate good literature, good book, good story, good character work, they cannot resist from continuing the series. I think it's just a matter of a lot of them would have not heard about Janny and the series for whatever reason, but now I think through the booktubers and the booktube world in general, if we can get the word out more, I'm sure. I think once you start book 1, you cannot stop it. That's what I'm thinking, because I am a person who gets a little bit intimidated by long series and tough books, especially because I'm a non-native speaker. So, but even even I couldn't just stop myself from continuing this series. So I have high hopes. I'm optimistic.
Well, I think that you will get your reward. Peril's Gate in many ways is the tipping point of the series, and Peril's Gate really begins to tread the ground of where this series is really going to become into its strengths. It took that long to build the foundation to get to that point where I can step off the edge of the envelope. And so Peril's Gate will begin that process. But telling somebody, you got to read 6 books to get there.
Well, it's not like the earlier books aren't rewarding.
No, it isn't rewarding. But it's when I say the things that are, there's already things in the series on the ground right now at Grand Conspiracy that made it memorable. If you think it's memorable now, the truly amazing is yet to come. And the characters are going to be in lockstep with that. The amazing characters and the amazing things they do are going to be all threaded through it. It isn't like suddenly the characters become secondary and the rest of it comes to the fore. No, it's all of a piece. But the things that are in this world, the world is going to come alive to you as a character and start to play its role. And a lot of the things that looked very tropey, even still now look very tropey, are not going to look the same anymore, because there are other things at work. Just exactly like the Fellowship's directive is, humanity, just like the destructive aspects of the Drakespawn, have to be eradicated if they break their accord. So if the compact breaks, humanity is in peril. That is so off the edge when you think of, these sorcerers are going to protect human beings. No, that's not the directive. Not at all. Not even close. You're going to begin to see why that directive is there. You're going to begin to see why that prerogative is upside down compared to most other fantasy, where saving mankind is the big deal. No, mankind's expendable. Peril's Gate is going to start to crack open why that is true. And can humanity rise to meet that, or will they fail? So where this series truly breaks the envelope and goes in its direction will begin to open up in Peril's Gate, and it will accelerate from there. It's going to go places you couldn't dream from this point. But everything that you read up till now was essential to getting there.
Yeah, what Chibipo said about Janny, but and also I just Angie said something that is true. I just also want to add though that most writers are seeking and striving for continuous improvement. Most writers, most of us, we want that our second book is better than our third, and our third's better than our fourth. Sorry, our fourth's better than our third, and our fifth's better than our fourth, etc. And this is also one of those rare series that, for me, it achieves that. I'm 54 years old. I've read quite a few books. Like, this series is one of the few series that actually each book gets better and better and better. And so it's not even just like, Angie is right that, yeah, you got to read the first book. But guess what, though? The second book's better, right? And the third book's better, and the fourth book's better. And that is a high bar to reach, and Janny achieves it. And because I can tell you, that's what every single writer out there is striving. We're all striving for that. And most of us fall short, but not with this series, man. There's no let up, right? And and that's the only thing about the first book, Angie. I can say this as a writer as well, that it is hard sometimes to get people to read the second book, even if the first book is good, because, well, one, there's so many books out there, and you have to spread your time, and there's so many series you want to get to. But also, too, that, you may not understand just how good that second book is. If you knew that second book was that good, you might drop everything else and keep reading. And that's I know that I'm striving for continuous improvement as an author, and I'm a newbie. I'm a little drop in the bucket compared to Janny, but I know that that's what most writers aim for. Janny nails it. She does it. So, that's something special.
The urge to just drop everything and finish the rest of the series has
Do
been
it.
harder and harder to resist. I want to, but I also have to read other things, so I have videos to put out on my channel, so that when I finish and gush about this series even more, people will still be watching. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a certain power in that. If you dropped everything else and said, the hell with everything else, it goes into the bucket and waits. Because one thing I've noticed about the old readers who've read this, each book as it comes out, they read each book that came out twice. They read it once to find out what happens, and then they read it again to pick up the depth. And this series just needs people who understand the depth. And I love it when people can't restrain themselves from going forward, because to me, if a series is that good, I'll always binge read it. I will always brush everything else aside. I will do what my heart says to do. But I don't know what to do about the fact that there aren't enough people to make a hot discussion. So you got to keep your channel going. Except you need more people saying the enthusiasm reigns here. Too bad. I don't know. I don't have the answer. I just wrote the thing. It's finished. It's out there. All the naysayers lost their bet. It's out there. So the cream will rise. All that needs to happen is it needs to be visible. And you people are a big part of that. So however you choose to do it is wonderful to me. Do your thing.
Well, I can't wait. I'm starting my YouTube channel as of today, actually.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 7:00 p.m. As you know, I'm part of Page Chewing, and I'll be hosting my first Page Chewing episode with Philip Chase at 7 p.m. tonight Eastern.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you. But my point is that the first, I plan to do reviews. I put out an announcement, the things you expect from my YouTube channel. I plan to do reviews. And the first book I'm going to review is one of Janny's books. And obviously, there's no other book more fitting to review than my favorite book of all time, To Rise Hill's Chasm. But rest assured, I'll be doing stuff involving the Wars of Light and Shadow. Lots of stuff over my, and I don't have the luxury of being popular like Miko, so it doesn't matter. No one's watching anyway, so I'm just gonna post what I want to post, and I don't have to worry about it. But I
It's going to change, Paul.
Will
You're writing
change.
so brilliantly, and every one of your books is better. That's going to change. Your stuff's going
Right.
to get seen. And you know what we need more than anything, I think, for some of these books that have been written that were not visible, because frankly, marketing is the king. And if there wasn't marketing behind a series, it does disappear. Let's be honest here. When the money isn't put forward upfront, it doesn't happen. I would like to see more channels put together, discussions where multiple series are talked about at the same time, because you're going to pull the old readers from the older series that are very popular, and you're going to be able to talk the strengths and the weaknesses of all of them together. And that's going to give the people the stepping stone that they need to know whether this is something they'll like or not. Is how does it differ from what I already love and it is tremendously popular, and how is it the same, or where are the strengths here? So I think that's a possible way going forward that we could broaden the field and broaden the discussion about the strengths of all the various series, because it's a lot of an investment of an author's time to do a multiple series. It's a lifetime work when you do something 11, 12, 10, 15, 17 books long. Their series are bigger than mine. Putting them all on the table and saying, what does the field look like? What have we accomplished so far since Tolkien, or since Gorman Gast, or since some of the antecedents that went before us from the Greek myths or the Iliad, going all the way forward? And where are we going? Laying that all on the table and saying, what has the fantasy field accomplished here? And putting these books in their places, whether the readers have read them or not. Too bad. Spoil them a little bit, because, you know, it's how it happens, not necessarily what happens. It's how it happened. It's the growth of the characters involved. It's the momentum of the world events that goes on. So throw this series and the other ones all into the mix. I think that's a way of shedding light on the strengths of the fantasy field in total. All of the writers working, Paul's work, Paige Christie's work, people who are not known next to the ones that are very well known. That's going to cross-pollinate and bring people in to they'll go into a series knowing what to expect, and that will help put a proportion and a grasp of, they're not going to be expecting another Ursula Le Guin or another Wheel of Time or another Malazan. They're going to expect what they see when they see the spectrum of where these series fall on the continuum. So it isn't as dark as Baker's series, or it isn't. So you see the whole spectrum, the really, really grim to the really, really light, and you put it all together and compare it. Have a big discussion. Call in all the booktubers. Have them come in with their favorite series and talk about their favorite series, so that they all get a chance to see what this field has to offer, because that's what fantasy is about. It's about breaking the envelope. It's about presenting new ideas. It's about taking a mythic background to a culture, the language of dream that says what our beliefs are, and then breaking them, reshaping them, or reinforcing them. What are we about as human beings? Fantasy has the ability to illuminate that.
Oh, wow. It's so accurate and so well put, right?
Yeah, very,
Well,
very,
we're
very
always
well
crying
said.
for diversity. Bring that diversity into a field-wide discussion of the major works, the long-form works. Who are they? What are they? Where do they take us in our minds? What did fantasy do to change my life? And then all the series can take their place on that world stage. I would love to see it.
Sounds amazing. That would be incredible. Because I realize every time I read a new fantasy series how few fantasy series I've actually read, despite feeling that I've read quite a few, and and how many more I want to read. And God grant me a fairly long life that I can read at least some more of these, because but thank God I discovered the Wars of Light and Shadow, because like everybody else, I'll be the first to say and admit that I had heard of Janny words, but just had no idea. I had no idea that this was. How could I think as someone in my 50s, that I was going to find my favorite fantasy series of all time when I've been reading fantasy for the better part of my life? Like, Imagine how mind-boggling that was for me to pick up a book and go, oh my God, like this is, I've struck gold. But I'm in my 50s, right? Like I've read the Jordans and the Donaldsons and the Martins and like all those big series. Most of them I've read them, but I hadn't read this. But this is my favorite. And you can imagine I'm in my 50s. Like that was eye-opening. That was
What's
very.
that, Nico? Yeah, it's eye-opening. But wouldn't it be fun to have a proponent of each series go on with a multiple? So what do you got, Nico? You just reach for your bookshelf.
I was just gonna say, it's just building on what Pierre was saying. I still am so thankful that I happened to come across this book, not even a very good in shape copy, but I come across this at the used bookstore, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I am grabbing this immediately. And I start reading it, and I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. And then I start getting some comments being like, oh my gosh, if you love that, she has this huge series called Wars of Light and Shadow, and add it to my list. I mean, it was complete happenstance that I local used bookstore happened to have this copy of Cycle of Fire. And that's why it's just the way you said that. I'm like, I've read a ton of fantasy too. And I mean, I'm a little bit younger than you, PL. But I've read a ton of fantasy. I've read a lot of the big ones. I've tried out to mixed results the series that everybody says like, oh, these are the best. I love Wheel of Time. Don't like Martin. It is what it is. But I've read these big series, so many, and I'm still discovering this series, the Wars of Light and Shadow, and finding that series that really seems like it's going to just take it to the next level and become the new impossible to replace favorite series of all time. I'm so excited, and it did, complete happenstance. I'm so glad it happened. I probably would have gotten there eventually, but it could have been years from now. And I'm so glad I started when I did, and have been able to join in all of these discussions as well.
So I have a dilemma now. So I don't have a copy of Peril's Gate yet, but I do have a copy of To Ride, what's called,
Hell's Chasm.
Yeah. So should I go for Peril's Gate or this one? It's a question.
Well, I wrote Hell's Chasm as a break, emotional relief from writing Peril's Gate.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So when people go, oh, it took you an average of 3 years to write 11 books. Actually, I wrote 12 because Hell's Chasm I wrote after Peril's Gate because I was in emotional pieces when I was done. So you could flip that on its head. If you need a copy of Peril's Gate and you can't get it where you are, just send me an address. I'll mail one.
No, I'm sure I can find. No, I just did not buy it yet either. I'm sure I can find it.
If you can't get it, also I can rattle my publisher's publicist and see if she'll send it to you on Kindle. I can arrange it because you're a tried and true reviewer at this point. So just keep me posted because I wouldn't want you unable to continue when you wanted to. But yeah, I did. I wrote Hell's Chasm for 2 reasons, 3 actually, because I wanted a break. Emotionally, I was in pieces. I wanted to take a deep breath after this point in the series before I continued on with it. And because at that time, so many series were in progress. Readers were saying, oh, these big series, writers die in the middle. They can't bring it home. Wirtz is never going to finish this thing. She started this great thundering thing in motion, and it's never going to come together. It's never going to work. It's never going to. So I said, fine, I'll give you a 5.5 day plot and I will wrap everything up and I will nail it in 5.5 days. 1 standalone book. Yes, I know what I'm doing. Yes, I can finish a book. Yes, I understand where the characters are all going. And yes, I can wrap it all up in 1 volume. So I wrote Hell's Chasm as that. And I also wrote it because at the time, there was a huge merger in the U.S. and I was going to lose my U.S. publisher. Peril's Gate was the end of the contract there. They were not going to renew because all the HarperCollins authors that merged with Avon were basically pitched out unless you were in the top tier making money. And they weren't backing anything. I'd had no ad budget, no nothing. They were just kind of spitting the books out. And in fact, there were 3 printings of Peril's Gate. And most of the collectors who brought me copies to sign have a black stripe on the page because they bought it as an overstock. Because they didn't even put it in the bookstores for people to see that it was out. the regular readers found it in overstock, and of course the purchase didn't count towards my numbers. So it was just a big smash. So I said, I'm going to write a standalone to restart my career. And unfortunately, 9/11 happened as I was writing that book. No publishers were buying. The entire market crashed and collapsed. So there was Hell's Chasm completely finished with no home in the US. And I had a London contract, that was all. And they put nothing behind it because they said, we can't get the bookshops to stock any books because everybody's convinced in a couple of days we're going to war. So that book fell completely between the cracks. It did not restart my career. In fact, it became the sinker because there's no record, no numbers, no. And it's a brilliant little fun fantasy. I mean, it's powerful. It's powerful. It has everything, all the kick you could expect from a standalone fantasy and then some, but it's unknown. So do what you like, read it, get it out there. It wrote like a house on fire. I did the entire thing in 8 months. I went to sleep and the book was still writing itself. I was scribbling notes when I shut down at night, and I woke up in the morning and it was continuing to write as I woke up. I couldn't stop that book. It was just an explosion. So, yeah.
Funnily enough,
anyone discover that book?
My copy of To Write Hell's Chasm is an overstock copy that randomly popped up out of nowhere on a website, and I have that. But what I've done too is, because I had to have the beautiful hardcovers, as many of them as I could get. Oh, you have a hardcover of that too. I have a paper.
Janny was so wonderful to send this to me.
I have cartons of them. I will happily sell you a copy of that.
My copy's downstairs.
I would love it.
And I have boxes and boxes and boxes of that hardcover, which has a full color illustration. It's beautiful.
That's gorgeous.
I'm happy to.
Yeah,
I
will message you immediately after this, because yes,
yeah, I want it
sold.
too, Janny.
Help me cover the shipping, and I will get it anywhere in the world. But
sure.
Yeah, it's a beautiful. I'll sign it any way you want it. Just send me an email and tell me that you want it, and I don't care. I'll sell it to you for $15 because $15 plus postage anywhere in the world.
That's
so
awesome.
I would love to have that. But what I was going to say is, I had to have the beautiful hardcovers, and you can't really buy the hardcovers new anymore and have that count. And so what I've been doing, and what I think I'm going to continue to do for the rest, is I'm also buying the ebook and just doing like both formats. So like if I'm reading in bed, I'll read on my Kindle, and then I still get to read the beautiful hardcover during the day. That way I'm still like generating a sale because I want to make sure that I'm supporting you. I'll probably, the one that has audio, I'll probably also buy the audiobook and have all like 3 formats too.
I'd love to see HarperCollins redo the series in large format with the matching covers. I mean, we're at the 30th anniversary. We're coming up on the final volume. Why not have a matching print run? But I can't make that happen. That's the readership. But yeah, it makes no sense to me. We never had a hardback for Storm Fortress. Are you kidding? They canceled it because what? They said we can't have enough orders to quite
Storm Fortress.
We needed 500 more sales, and I'm going. The U.S. had no edition of that book. Do it in the United States, and you'll gain all the United States. You'll kick over that 500 copy limit by thousands. But getting the logical decision pushed through fast enough to make a difference. So yeah, I would love to see a matching, because all the people who collected the hardcovers don't have a hardcover edition of Storm Fortress. Come on.
It does kill me a little bit.
Pick it up. Do it.
Yeah, I've almost accepted that I will never have all your books in the same format. I
would never accept that, because I would never accept that I was never going to finish it because there wasn't a contract, and I got a contract. I had to give up some things, audio rights being one of them. I will never accept that. It will never happen. I will always fight for this coming forward.
Oh no, I don't believe that. I believe it will happen. I just understand that, I'm not parting with any of these. So or because so in other words, I will not have my own format because I'm not parting with any of them. Because some of them you've given to me, and if they're mismatched with other ones that you give to me, I'm not parting with them. So I'm just keeping whatever I have, right? So the books are too precious to me. So, but no, I definitely agree.
It's been a long haul. I
One day
had a
we-
rough time finding
Yeah.
some of them. But
Make your
it's-
displeasure known.
Oh, we are. Believe me,
HarperCollins Voyager in London.
believe me, we
You know,
are.
HMA letter. You spend the international stamp and make your displeasure known because they are on the decision maker. My editor is leaving. They are understaffed. They are overworked. I think there's going to be one person running that office for the foreseeable. And if you want to go be the editor over there, fine, step into the job and be my editor. But yeah, just make your decision known here because, or what your wants known, because that's what's going to set them up is they have to hear a clamor. Because if they don't, they'll assume that, oh, everybody's just happy buying the ebook and we don't need to bother. And the front list is going to take precedence. And the book they just bought last week is going to take precedence. So it's going to take a lot of push to get over the bump. But I will never not believe that it's not worth it. I think it can happen. I absolutely do, especially knowing what's in that finale.
No, I agree too. Absolutely. And I apologize. I didn't mean to say that. I mean that for me, I'm not, these are going with me to the grave. Like what I have, because they're so precious to me. And you gave me some of these and some of them I got otherwise. And so fine, they don't match, but I have all your books. So that's
all right. So fine. They're going with you. Don't die at sea. Then there'll be fish food.
We have a comment from Jennifer Robin. We need to gather some booktubers to drive their viewers to ask for audiobooks and a special edition printing for the whole series. And I agree. You know what? There was a previous comment from GB also about a lot of the rings and how, Janny can be, at the same level as Tolkien. And also, we don't understand why these editors and people, you had this pushback. And, I am going to be vindictive because I'm sure that in future, in very, very soon, in near future, that, you will achieve that status, Janny, that you deserve. And that's when I'm going to be vindictive that, I'm going to call out all these editors and say, see, this should have happened 20 years ago, but because of you guys, we have to call them out and we have to gang up on them, I think, at that point.
Well, Under the Radar books, I owe you, Blaze. And also, there were many things that was the perfect storm of difficult luck. Okay. And one of the things that was both the huge blessing and the big curse was the success of the Empire series, because it caused expectations for the series that did not match. And since that point, also editors leaving that knew what the series was. I lost the people who understood what I was doing very, very early on. And if they don't know what they have, it's because they have not read it. And the one editor I got to read it has to go to another job now. So they're overworked. They did not have time to stop and look at what they had. So it was just too easy to say, just put a quote on it or sell it to the Empire readers. And it doesn't necessarily mix. There is crossover. And some Empire readers love this, but some of them that come to it with a preset expectation don't understand what they just stepped into. So get them to read it. Get them to understand what it is about you love it. Other readers too. Why do you love this series? What is it that stood out for you? And how did it compare with what else you read? Because that's what's going to place it in a reader's mind that says, well, I love this and I love that, or I was disappointed in this and this series, but I like that. That's going to give them the confidence to go buy it and check it out. Is give them footing to stand on as to why it worked for you.
Yep. Totally agree. Pierre, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Sorry, yeah. Well, I know that I know we're probably winding down, but I quickly want to say two things. Number one, obviously we talk about sadly how underrated an author Janny is. But I also want to give a quick, again, I think I've said this before, what an underrated booktuber that Angela is. And, I think she's very humble and she's really, self-facing. But I mean, Angela, you're so smart. You're so insightful. You're fantastic. Putting this together has just been amazing. It's one of my highlights. Thank you so much. I'm just honored to be part of it. But yes, for people who are watching, you need to like and subscribe and tune into Angela's channel. She puts some awesome stuff out there. Some of it's really funny and quirky and really cool. And she does, great deep dives, analysis, and all kinds of stuff that, is really, really fascinating. And I just hope, Angela, your viewership continues to grow. And, you're just awesome. So
100%.
Thank you, Paul. That needed to be said. Definitely.
Thank you.
And we need more international voices, so it's really important to look wider than just what everybody else is looking at.
Yeah.
And you guys, when you put up what you're doing on your channel, it gives me the chance to retweet it and boost it. So don't be shy about dropping onto Twitter and putting up what your newest drop is, because I will support you. Absolutely. All of you. But I can't push out there what I can't see. And right now my life is really complicated for more reasons than just professionally. I can't go. I do try to spend once a week and zip through all your channels and see what you're doing, but I can't always keep up with that.
Yeah.
And the algorithm sometimes hides
Completely
it, frankly. So the algorithm sometimes obscured it, trying to find out what your most recent is as opposed to what your most popular is. They've changed the algorithm, and your most popular or most recent, it drops out and I can't see. And then I dig for it, and I can't even always see it when I dig for it. So please put a self-promotional post where I can find it and tweet it and push it for you, and drop me a note in my DMs, because I'm following all of you, that you put it out there, and I will find that post. I'll go to your page and I will find it, because the algorithm is deep sixing stuff all the time. So make sure I see what you're doing, not just with my stuff, but all your stuff, because I will push it totally. And if you've read a book that I've read and I can make a comment personally about what you're talking about, I will always push the book that you're talking about. I can't do it when I haven't read the book, but often I have. So make sure I know what you're doing, because it matters.
Yeah.
I'm so bad about using Twitter, but I'm trying to be a little bit better.
I get so confused. I started recently. I mean, I have never used Twitter before, only for BookTube. I started using it. It's so confusing. I mean, I don't know how to see the continuation of a conversation. Sometimes some people reshare something, and I want to see the main post. I can't see it, so I'm kind of dumb with Twitter. So I'm mostly using YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. But now I'm trying to use more and more of Twitter, because there are a lot of new authors that I get to discover through Twitter. So small and upcoming
just popping that post up there, then I can boost it for you. And at least if you're involved in a conversation and you're coming in late, if you click on that conversation and then you scroll up, sometimes you can see the earlier comments. The scroll bar will be halfway down. I'm on Mac, so I don't know if it works for you, but if you push the scroll bar up when you're on that response, you'll see the beginning of the conversation.
Okay.
But it won't appear on the screen unless you push that scroll bar up.
All right, so we are towards 18 minutes in. So any final words? I just want to say that only one word, that I just cannot wait for Peril's Gate, given how it ended. This one ended. So, but now I'm thinking maybe I should do a palate cleanser with to ride Hell's Castle. Maybe. I'm thinking I will make my decision tomorrow. It's too late now to make a decision with clear head, but I just cannot wait generally to get back to Janny. Yeah.
Well, I'll just say thanks so much, Angie, for hosting this. Grand Conspiracy is a wild ride. Peril's Gate will blow everything else out of the water. My suggestion, Angie, wait till you finish Peril's Gate for the palate cleanser. But that's just food for thought.
Okay.
Right, I can't wait to talk about that one, which I'll be picking up probably tomorrow for my second reread, and I can't wait for it. So glad we can do this, and this is going to be. It's just starting. Let's just say this, and what you think you're reading about the series. There's facets that haven't been introduced yet. So,
Nico, when are you
wait.
planning to start? When are you planning to start this Perils Gate?
Probably either today or tomorrow at this point.
Oh, okay, already. Okay.
I've been trying to think and map out, I've been trying to I've been trying to like plan and do other stuff, but I'm just like I'm dying to get to it, and especially if we're gonna take a little, if we do like Hell's Chasm or take like a break after or something too. I'm like, I just have to know. I have to finish this one. So I'll probably start really soon. I will also straight up. I know Janny for two, but like if you have like a wish list or something, like I'll get you Perils Gate too. If there's somewhere that'll ship to you easier. Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm always so like energized and wanting to read after these live shows, and Perils Gate, I'm even more excited for us.
So I think any final words from Janny to our viewers? But I mean, I'm sure our viewers got the gist of it. That my message and all our message is that to pick up the series and read it. That's the one message, one takeaway for all of you. That you don't know what you're missing. It's huge, it's amazing, it's life-changing, like Shibipo is saying here. It is transcendent and uplifting, and you will feel that as you progress through the book, and you will feel that more and more as you progress through the book. So that would be my closing words, and I will just give Janny the floor to just wind this up.
I want to thank every one of you for being here today and for being so enthusiastic and enjoying all the little nuances, because it's like water in the desert. Because I was writing this all by myself, practically in isolation, fighting these huge battles to keep it going so that it wouldn't get deep six, to literally make sure that you got that final volume to finish. So I'm ever so grateful to Angie for hosting this, to Blaze for putting it on Under the Radar, 2.5 years ago now, for
3.
Paul for being such an incredible fan, and for Nico for finding that Cycle of Fire in that used bookstore and moving on into the bigger series. Some of my best friends are the people who read this series and understand what it's about, because it truly says something about the readership's ability to stand back from their own problems, their own prejudices, their own preconceptions, and see a bigger picture. It's a special kind of human being that reads this series and understands what it's about. It says that you're the ones that are going to be the map makers for the future, because you're able to turn on a dime and leave behind outmoded ways of thought and see a wider horizon behind. And so as the series goes on, it won't disappoint that quality in you, where you want answers. You want something that's bigger. You want a transcendence. You want a higher viewpoint of the problems that seem to fence us in daily. So my hat goes off to all of you for being those kind of people, because we need more of that. We need more of that. And you're leading the pack. So it takes a maverick to think outside the box, but it also takes a flexible mentality and a special quality of empathy to follow your heart and go where the crowd didn't go. So you're special, and you're special to me because of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janny.
Means a lot to all of us, Janny, for sure.
Thank you, Janny. That means so much.
Thank you.
Fantasy readers have that quality, but fantasy readers who step above that quality and have it in spades, you guys are all there on the page, and I'm there for you. I'm there for you. Whatever the fight takes, I'm there for you. So don't hesitate to reach out to me if I can help you.
Sure.
Quick thanks to Chibipo, one of the great
Yes.
ones.
Yes.
Amazing.
I know.
Thanks,
You're
Chip.
so passionate.
Yeah, fantastic fellow. So.
Right. So thanks everybody for joining, and we will see you soon next month with the discussion of the Perils Gate. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.